Welcome, everyone, to another great episode of the Quarter Notes podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Dre Pino. This week is a phenomenal episode. This was on my bucket list. If you would have told me when I was 15 years old that I would have the opportunity to talk with Jord Samoleski of Propagandhi, I would have laughed in your face. Jord's not on social media, so I was able to get in touch with him, and he immediately agreed to be on the podcast. It was super chill, so generous with his time. We talk about how he grew up in a small town just outside of Winnipeg, to then going into the city to see punk rock shows before he was technically old enough to do so. His constant search for inspiration. It's just a great chat. We nerd out on drum gear and some of the different changes that he's had to make over the course of his career due to some hearing issues. It's just a great episode. So I'm gonna not keep talking here. And again, this is by far one of my all-time favorite conversations that I've had. And I was able to catch it on camera. So sit back, enjoy one of the greatest Canadian drummers of all time, Jord Samoleski.
All right, I'm back.
Cool, right on. Thanks like a million times over for doing this. I know you don't.
Oh, thank you.
I know you guys aren't like the type to do a whole lot of press and interviews and all that stuff, letting people into the camp. So it's a big honor. Before I get started, I was literally just upstairs getting my coffee, and my wife was like,
Evening coffee.
It's decaf."
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like almost 10 o'clock here. My wife is like, "What kind of burger does he like?"
What kind
So
of burger?
what's your favorite burger?
My favorite burger?
Yeah.
You know what? It's got to be whatever. My partner has some friends where they're getting this yearly veggie burger making sort of extravaganza going, I think for early May or later May,
Yeah.
where they kind of get together, get all the ingredients in advance, make four different kinds, and kind of then share all whatever one of those ones is. Like
Yeah.
if you call that your favorite, then you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, is it like, 'cause I know like we do a lot of like mushroom burgers and stuff. Like she was talking about like getting some lion's mane mushrooms and stuff like that. Like,
Oh, well, that sounds pretty good.
yeah, I've never had that. So anyway,
Lion's mane mushrooms?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't experimented with too many mushrooms, but yeah, mushrooms are fun to go to a place where they actually know what they're doing, cooking them, and then get some ideas from that, you know?
Yeah. All right, cool. So first I ever heard Propagandhi would have been on the old Fat Records compilations. Back in like
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah.
like 90s. Yeah, it'd be like early mid 90s. And I hadn't heard Propagandhi before. And then when I realized that you guys were a Canadian band and you guys were hitting so much harder than the other bands, like it blew my mind. Like just musically, lyrically, it was just like it was insane. But the drumming immediately, this was when I was starting to play drums, so the drumming just immediately stood out as something completely not like the other bands.
Interesting.
So that's I just got to give props and flowers for that, like right off the hop, because
Oh,
I think
thanks.
you've influenced a lot of drummers, probably more than you realize. There's a there's a Facebook group. I know you don't do a lot of social media, but there's a Facebook group that was formed by Matt Morris. He's from the band Fire Sale.
Hmm.
It's called Punk Rock Drummers. So ahead of this, I kind of put out that I was going to be having a chat in case anybody wanted to get any questions or any insight from you, right?
Okay.
And it just like blew up, like just like 30, 40 messages came right up, like, oh my God. Like, um, so unlike 99% of other online groups, this is like a very like safe space. It's very supportive. Like there's some pretty big name drummers like in the punk rock community that are part of the group. It goes all
Cool.
the way from the top down to like kids that are just learning how to play.
Oh, neat.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome. So some of the questions that they've asked me to ask were kind of intertwined with some of my own that I already had. Um, but one of the questions, and this was something I was going to ask, and you don't have to get into too much detail because it was just something that you guys dropped today, was the whole cancellation of a bunch of US dates. Um,
Yeah.
any insight at all as to what kind of prompted that decision?
Well, it's a very, very complicated situation. We're
Mhm.
just kind of, under the banner of it basically being circumstances beyond our control. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah,
It's a multi-layered, multi-faceted sort of ongoing situation that we've been monitoring very, actively for a number of months. And I think we had a way that we felt we were comfortable in proceeding. We'd kind of had some offers. We nipped a lot right down and kind of streamlined a lot of stuff so that we were going to be touring in a very, very different sort of mode for those dates. And I don't know, a few more rugs got pulled from us, and it's just kind of it's been really tough. I sort of regret that we didn't come to this much earlier, but I mean we were all sort of on board to essentially leave the door open to, you don't want to close something like this until, unfortunately, it was a little bit late for us. And I hope we're not causing a huge, shitstorm, especially for people who, may have made some travel plans or arrangements. Anyways,
yeah,
it's sort of like just similar to the COVID era of doing stuff, but much different at the same time. It's the considerations are much, much different. So there's just a bunch of pushing and pulling, and eventually it sort of hit a point where the circumstances that developed over the last week are significant enough that none of us are comfortable proceeding. Yeah,
yeah.
that's about it. I mean, we could talk about this all night if we
Oh,
really
we
wanted
won't.
to get into
We
it.
won't.
It's just it's shitty. Like I really don't know what to say. It's just it feels like we had our plans, now we're not doing them, and now we're trying to pivot to a couple of plan B options, and
Yeah,
we're sort of riding it like a bit of a roller coaster, and
yeah,
trying to adapt to one day to the next, and just kind of let it happen, and not,
yeah,
I think we're past the point of hopefully of like just kind of being stressed and wringing our hands over it. It's just like, shit, you just
yep.
and
Got to move on.
everybody else is kind of in the same boat. So what are you going to do? You can't really,
Yeah.
get too upset about it.
No, exactly. I mean, some obviously people are going to be disappointed, but there will come a day where things will it'll pass over, and things will kind of get back to open borders and people being able to plan this type of stuff out a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's the hope, especially for for musicians and touring musicians. Um, all right, so all that aside,
Mhm.
let's let's get to the good stuff. So the premise of this, as you know, is to get to know more about the drummers and the individuals and their story, and kind of how they came to the instrument and all that. So where did your musical journey start? Like, what age did you kind of get into paying attention to, not drums specifically, but just
Okay.
music and art in general?
Uh, well, it was pretty early age for me. My mom, like she stayed at home and raised us. I was the eldest of like I have a brother and a sister. Um, by the time we moved into a house, I was 3 years old. And I guess I have memories of my parents' turntable and all their albums, like so. My mom taught piano as a stay-at-home mom, kind of sort of under the table, which was sort of the way it was done.
Yeah,
Uh, and so there was piano kind of going on, and I just remember their old Beatles albums and the just, pop music from that time. The Rumors album was on a lot,
Mm.
Fleetwood Mac and that kind of stuff. But they had kind of like a bit of an eclectic taste. Like my dad kind of liked some old ZZ Top, and he got into like Santana and War and stuff like that. So there was, I don't know, I liked the kind of stuff that had a lot of like different rhythmic aspects to it, like cowbells and different percussive kind of things. I gravitated to that. I think just like listening to music. I always kind of like tunes where the music drops out and then it's just the drums kind of going. There's so
Yeah.
many of those, and even like like Low Rider by War and stuff like that. Like it just I loved that kind of, groove and stuff as a kid. And so my mom taught piano, and my dad was kind of like a if he'd go out Friday after work, and later in the evening, he would kind of get out this bongo drum and kind of sit there with headphones on in the dark after everybody else would go to bed. But had a few memories of just sort of like, coming upstairs, like, what the hell's he doing? What's this racket 3 in the morning? And then just this dark room, and you could just see this lit cherry of a cigarette, and he'd be kind of playing in the dark by himself. But I was always kind of intrigued by that. Like, wow, he's having a lot of fun. Like, I mean, it's the middle of the night. Why is he not going to bed? He's just kind of in his little zone, kind of enjoying himself, enjoying his buzz and having but I like that, like sort of like playing along to these records in a way. He wasn't very musical, but he loved music. He loved going out and dancing, actually, like any sort of local social or any kind of outing would be,
Mhm.
him and my mom hitting the dance floor immediately. And so I was always kind of around that, like this fostering of music as sort of like part of the part. It was just a regular part of the day. Like, the radio's always kind of on in the background, that kind of thing. And then like, like holidays was always the Nana Muscuri and Boney M Christmas album, all the old
Yeah.
standard classics kind of coming out and all that. But so I sort of feel like I kind of have like a little bit of both influences from my mom. Like my mom got me playing piano eventually, and then, go through a few years of conservatory types teaching and learning, and then get introduced to another piano teacher because it's, I think, important, separate, go with another adult who's not your mom, and start learning from somebody else outside of the home, and going all these different things. They kind of like set the stage for, okay, I wasn't comfortable with that, but then you get over it and break down these different things about playing around people and stuff like that. And
Yeah. So was your first
eventually,
time playing in front of an audience at the piano? Like,
yes, it would have been at those conservatory,
yeah.
painful
The recitals. Yeah.
recitals. But back then it was like everybody playing, like 30 kids playing the same song
Yeah.
over and over. God. In a stuffy room on the nicest day of summer,
Mm.
But so that eventually that kind of starts wearing thin, and you're, you're growing up, and kind of, I guess in my early teenage years, I had a friend who lived a couple doors down, and he had older sisters, and it's kind of like, okay, I hadn't heard Loverboy before. Let's listen to that. And then AC/DC. Wow, okay, this is
Yeah.
getting interesting. And Nazareth, and hearing Razamanaz, actually, that song for the first time, like, the way that starts. The intro and all that. There's some double kick going on. It's like, what the hell? Like I was having trouble putting together. Like, how do they do that?
Mm.
Interesting things to think when you're kind of a, a young kid, just kind of hearing this stuff. But anyway, my buddy there, Bruce, he had a drum kit in their basement and next to their stereo. And we just, put on one album and kind of one guy sort of singing along with the lyric sheet, trying to be a vocalist, and the other guy kind of playing drums along. And for some of the slower AC/DC stuff, that's good for sort of followable song structures to kind of just play along with. So eventually, as a joke, I think it must have been, I'm guessing around 83. My mom bought a, like, I don't even think you could call it like a drum kit. It was sort of like an old destroyed, like it was a three-piece jazz kit. I don't even know what it was. Anyway, she was excited that she got him a drum kit to play on these nights instead of his bongo. But he couldn't really get, the separation of the
The four
limbs down.
limbs. Yeah.
I, and it was pretty junky kit. Like I remember trying to even fart around on it was like, holy man, like it's almost doesn't even function. It was almost kind of like, man, this is a stretch. Like this
Yeah. Yeah.
isn't really a drum kit at all.
Like you can't make the sounds that you're hearing with it.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
just didn't seem to really add up. But I mean, she got it for, well, it was just sort of a piece of junk.
Mhm.
Um, but that, and then my buddy having a decent kid at his place, it kind of gave me a goal. At that time I had a paper route, and um I had kind of embraced music kind of to the point then where um I wanted to get a drum kit. I knew that a drum kit would take money, so it's kind of, say I'm 14 at this point, turning 15. I want to have a drum kit, but I know that there's this adult transactional sort of, unfun aspect to getting one. So it's kind of like, okay, my parents would loan me the cash to get a Pearl export kit, which was like, okay, entry level. It was a real kit, not a great kit, but it was the only one that was possible to get at that time, that
Yeah.
like something new from the store or whatever. So it was okay. They'd buy it for me. I make the money to pay them back and all that kind of stuff. So okay, now I'm working harder. I got to focus. And when I got that kit, I was, I guess, my paper route years, then it's like I got to quit to make wage, like a better wage to do this stuff. But I remember just walking around our street and listening to all this 80s hard rock and kind of metal and stuff like that, and just kind of like being, I don't know, like mesmerized by the drums. And this is before I had the drum kit, but I was just kind of like mentally listening to this stuff over and over and over, listening just to the drum tracks, and thinking like, how would they do that? And then going to my friend Bruce's every once in a while, or sort of figuring out how to play the instrument, and then finally getting the kit. And that's all I wanted to do was kind of come home, put an album on, and fart around like, oh no, that's not how you do it. But just that trial and error of different things, and some stuff, you're getting way off and wrong for years,
Oh,
and
yeah.
finally understanding, oh, that's how that little thing is done on that old record. I
Yeah.
always thought it was this way, and then more doors opening. It's just
Yeah.
this constant learning process,
It's like
like
it's like the
light.
happy accident where you start something on the opposite hand and then you're like, oh, they
Oh man.
start on the left, not the right. Like, yeah.
Speaking of that, how many times have we had little parts in songs that we're jamming around to that were born out of mistakes?
Yeah.
Essentially, like whoops, and then hey, actually, that sounded kind of good. Try to
Yeah.
do that again, like
Yeah.
repeat the fuck up. And it's
Repeat
not
that.
quite,
Yeah.
but an aspect of it. Yeah, it's interesting how that kind of goes. But
So you had like piano lessons. So as far as the drums, it sounds like you kind of didn't go the lesson route and just sort of carved your own path and figured it out on your own way.
well, I lived in a small town, and there wasn't really much in around nearby that was like the prospect of getting actual real lessons. I'd have to go to the city. Like I grew up in Portage la Prairie, so it was like, okay, figure I didn't have a driver's license or nothing. figuring out a ride to go get lessons. It's like, okay, well, it's good enough just to play along with dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Like I'm just having fun doing that anyways. There was like a local music school in Portage, but it was very, very, very like very introductory. So I did do a lesson, and it was kind of like the guy's like, "Wow, you've played piano, you've figured out how to, play along to AC/DC records." That's sort of what he was, trying to get kids up to the point to, and then, that was sort of the scope of those lessons. So, yeah, it was just kind of back to, listening, trying to figure stuff out, and then eventually, um, that was also the time where I started playing with other people that were also learning their instruments. And I got involved with a local cover band in Portage. It was sort of like a passing of the reins of the old 70s, 80s style of like a Army and Navy or Legion Hall where they would have Friday, Saturday
Yep.
entertainment. And it's
Mhm.
kind of like 9 to 1. They would hire one band to play four sets,
Yep.
4 45-minute sets
I grew
of,
up in that world.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, what a way, like what a challenge to thrust yourself into. And I kind of like it was interesting. We had there's some really nice people involved in that project. And my friend Murray from Portage, his Murray Pulver, his dad kind of coached us into being like a junior version of a cover band, more or less, and how to learn and how to like what kind of songs you have to have. So that was good. Like I was thrust into playing a lot of stuff and styles that I wasn't really into, like polkas and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Some light country music. But when you have 4 45-minute sets and you can't double up on anything, it was like, holy shit, that's a lot.
It's
So
a
it,
lot of
it was
music.
a real,
Yeah.
like throwing us into kind of like a pretty active learning project that I think kind of helped set the stage for me once I was introduced when I was, I guess, 15, 16, and getting into like underground metal and discovering punk music and all that kind of stuff. I guess it kind of helped me kind of get to the point where it's like, okay, the drumming on this stuff is radically different, and to me at the time so much more exciting. It was just like more just putting everything into it, and
Yeah.
there's something fun about that. And just getting into an underground music scene that you didn't know existed. Like all I knew was pop music, and I'd been to see Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and a handful of arena shows, but then you learn about this underground stuff, and it's like, wow, you don't need a whole arena. Like you can
No. You can
there's
be a part
people
of it.
playing, yeah, playing heavy music at these
Mhm.
weird, scary, very intriguing and very exciting places that, I didn't even know existed. And then just unearthing that interest and kind of just trying to get involved with that. Well, that was, that just took
So what
the
bands would
direction of
have
what I
come
wanted to
around
do with music.
that what bands would you have been able to see, like go to the clubs and see and kind of, I don't know, like that would have influenced you? Like what drummers were in that scene at that time that you were kind of looking to for inspiration?
In the underground
Yeah.
scene,
Yeah.
yeah, like I guess, well, Chris and our band introduced me to a lot of underground metal, and then inevitably you're at the appropriate record stores in Winnipeg. I come in on the bus occasionally from Portage, the old Greyhound when that existed. Wasn't that
Yeah.
awesome? And just spend the afternoon like record shopping, buying fanzines and just being like, what the hell? This is all over the world. This stuff. This is just so engaged with it. But so then eventually, okay, the next step from that is learning about local shows. Okay, are we gonna try to go to some of these things? I went with a few Portage guys. The first one I went to is seeing DOA at a place called the Punk Douglas. It had a few kind of nicknames. It's just a community hall rental sort of, but there they are bringing in this band from the West Coast. There's this crowd completely packed, um, completely intimidating and scary to walk into that room and see so many weird types of people. It was just like a very like a interesting collection of oddballs that you didn't know existed, and then all of a sudden it's like 300 freaks and weirdos just acting like in ways that you've never really experienced in your short life before this. Like even the like it's not like it was self-police. There was no security. There's people drinking in the parking lot, smashing beer bottles. It's like kind of like, holy shit, this is, rough area of town. It was a lot to like, it was so exciting to me. And then walking in the door and just being like, oh my God, there was a local band playing with horns and like that's what I liked. It was like it wasn't all the same band playing. It was like a big mix.
Yeah, punk rock shows are good that way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And back then I think it had the like there's I don't know. I guess it's still the same, but when you're coming at it, with fresh ears and you haven't experienced it before. So that was my first punk show. And then from there, like I think it was, I can't remember if it was that summer or the summer following, but I got to see Government Issue play with Pete Moffat, uh, who he blew me away. Like he was just a perfect combo of like a punk rock drummer with just all the oomph of like big rock and roll. Like he was just I loved his playing. And on the last two Government Issue albums, it's just like I just a pleasure. I got to see him play twice with them, and it knocked my socks off both times. And actually, the first time I saw them, the Doughboys happened to play that night too. And
love
it
the
was
Doughboys.
yeah, it was just like the kind of energy with that stage show is, I'd never seen anything like that. It was kind of like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah, Doughboys are one of those bands. Like people that know them love them, but like not enough people know about them. They're just such a good band.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
yeah,
They were just such a you know, great live band, I guess, back in those days.
yeah,
And yeah, so and then from there, like Dayglow Abortions. I like Jesus Boneheads playing. Like that first album of theirs was the first punk album I ever bought. So I had a special spot for that kind of stuff. And
yeah.
and pretty much like, SNFU would come through, Ted Sims, like lots of Western Canadian bands, and they all had these really, really, really great drummers, like
No means no.
everything. Oh, exactly. Like that was the first real bar show that I went to. Like we actually Chris and I and my buddy Bruce from Portage were go down a couple doors and play along the Loverboy and AC/DC. It was me and him and Chris that went to we kind of snuck in and got to see late period stretch marks. I think that must have been earlier than than the other shows. And that was just kind of wandering into Wellington's, sitting downstairs. We definitely were way too underage to be there. Just kind of like that kind
Yeah.
of thrill, is pretty special. But yeah, the first real like crazy bar experience that I went to was no means no. I was a month away from turning 18, and I kind of got into the show, and the old Royal Albert Hotel in Winnipeg. I think I saw it that packed maybe two other times. I was there, I don't know, like, 3 or 4 times a week for a few years. And yeah, that first No Means No show I saw, like I was right at the back of the room, stuck up against the wall, unable to move, kind of like, holy shit, like this is fucking crazy. Capacity in there is like maybe 200. I don't know, you used to hear that they'd stick 600 people in that room, and I could believe it. Like it was a sardine fest, no doubt about that. But it's something added to it where it's like, why are this many people here for this band? And then they start playing. It's like, holy shit, like this is unreal. And I always loved seeing that band play. And actually, they were pretty influential on me in a lot of ways, including my eventual sort of setup and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I always loved his playing and how they sort of how I don't know, like just three guys. There's no pretense to that group at all. They just were what they were to such a distinct degree that they were just very special.
Yeah, I had John as a guest a few episodes ago, and I'd mentioned it to him. Like, No Means No is one of those bands that like they've influenced so many bands. And SNFU, I heard it right away. With Propagandhi, I hear like his playing, some of his approach. I can hear where you would have gotten that
Oh, I
that
bet.
style.
Yeah,
Just the
there's a
way
lot
like
of points. Yeah.
playing, like the way you play over the bar, like the way you start your fill kind of halfway through a measure. Like there's so many little things that just add so much to the Propagandhi's music that you contribute. I mean, the shredding guitars and killer bass lines and the lyrics and everything, but to me, some of the drumming is so standout in a lot of what you guys do that really shapes, the ebb and flow of the song. Like it, yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, I'm gonna
Oh,
nerd out a
thanks.
little bit again. So, but for some of that, like where I was saying earlier, where so you get inspiration from one drummer, and then you then inspire the next, and that kind of goes on, right? And I don't want to necessarily compare you to like someone like Neil Peart, but what Propaganda I find has done with the prog punk, if you can call it that, um, you know, you could approach the songs with just like a straight ahead, the forbidden punk beat, like the boom pap boom pap, whatever you want to call it. But you're always doing something different and unique, So I'm guessing that comes from listening to guys like John Wright and like, from No Means No and stuff like that.
Yeah, and well, over the years too, like I went just trying to think, through the early 90s. Oh, Reed Mullen, Corrosion of Conformity. I got to see those guys play pretty early on, and that was a killer show. Like that was kind of like I think a pretty major moment for me seeing that kind of crossover kind of thing because it I liked a lot of metal and I was kind of getting into a lot of the punk stuff and a lot of the just sort of like the adult themes of a lot of punk rock music, especially in the 80s, as you're a kid trying to figure out what's going on in the world. Like I was 10 when Ronald Reagan was sort of put in, and then I was 18 when he kind of left office with Bush one to follow for the next 4 years. So it was kind of like there's a lot of angry, spirited political kind of stuff coming out, and that really drew me in. Like the music drew me in first, and then it was that side of the punk scene that kind
Mhm.
of really engaged me for the next 10, 15, 20 years from just for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but then, yeah, I don't know. I mean, years later, I went to New York for a week and I got to see some like a I think about it quite a bit, just being able to go and watch music for a week and just be around the city. And I went and saw a free jazz player, Rashid Ali, play, which was like, okay, I I hadn't really seen free jazz before. It was kind of mind blowing, but kind of like I'm not so sure this is my cup of tea, but I respect it,
Respect
and
it. Yeah.
it was certainly something to witness and behold. I enjoyed it, but in that same week, I got to see like Dave Wackel play with Victor Wooten playing bass, like this pretty crazy band. But this, like the free jazz place was a corner bar. This place where I saw Dave Wackel play was some sort of weird, like dress up supper club or something like that in like Times
Yeah. Yeah.
Square. And I
Or like
go
a
to
full
that.
full course meal being served at the same time kind of
Oh
thing.
my God, I couldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
believe it. Like there's serving staff, like I just went in to sort of like, I don't want the dinner option. Not going to eat it anyways, but let me just get a spot. And there's waiters' hands, topping up people's, coffees and stuff like that. Just like I couldn't believe it's like people are getting in the way, like God, standing up, like I can't believe this is going on while these guys are performing because the performance was absolutely mind blowing, but the social setting was completely fucking weird. Like I
Weird.
hated it. And just like mink coats and shit like that. It's like this isn't about the music at all, much different than the greasy hole that I saw, the free jazz in. And then a few days later, I got to see Billy Cobham play. Um, um, and that was just like a pure, like I don't know, that show I just felt like I one of those shows where you're just sitting there grinning the whole time, just watching. I don't know. It was just that just blew me away. And like his style of playing is kind of like I think that gives you another oomph when you sort of see somebody kind of sort of playing
Yeah.
kind of like that fast and that precise and that just
With
everything
intent.
honed in.
Yeah.
Me?
Like with intent, like everything
Yeah.
is specific to a purpose.
Yeah, yeah. It was just like the musicians were just outrageously good. So there's something about seeing that when you're, I guess I would have been about 32 around that time. And that's just another layer of, inspiration, like I went to a CBGB show on that same trip and was kind of, oh, that was kind of fun to see it before it gets, turned into the next gentrification effort, whatever. But I was really glad that I went to those other ones, just to kind of get a sense of the place and what what else is out there in this big world. So I always like listening, and I like all different kinds of music for sure. And I think that's maybe kind of an important thing is just to kind of look out of your own sort of genre and confines for little interesting bits to spice things up here and there.
Absolutely. Like and drummers are very much of that mind, I think, just in general. Drawing inspiration from everywhere. Like I can't think of like every drummer that I know play in. I mean, there's always that old joke about how many bands is a drummer in. Like usually like all of the bands, um, but like they're always in like multiple genres. Like they'll play in a metal band, a country band, a top 40 pop, four set kind of a band, and then on the side they're using learning sheets and trying to play jazz. Like it's sort of a different instrument that way. Like, we'll never master it, but we're always looking for inspiration everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Um, so you kind of were talking a bit earlier about like the whole political aspect of it. And like Propagandhi has always been very, politically charged band, with lyrics and stuff like that. And as the drummer in the band, you don't get to talk a whole lot. Um, has there ever been a time where you felt like the band was like, hey, maybe let's not go there, or is it sort of like we have the platform that we have to use it to the fullest and speak out a bit about anything and everything. Like, is there ever anything that you think is like off the table?
No, I don't think so. No. I think if anything, everything should be on the table at this point. I think too many people take things off the plate, you know, off the table, and it's just kind of like, well, geez, you get to the comfort zone where it's not really talking about much of anything anymore, and it kind of detunes the form to a degree and kind of leaves it almost just being a platform for advertising, at a certain point. It's just like, what is this for? Just, video game music or
Mm.
selling Monster Energy drinks and shit like that. It's
Yeah,
kind of
really.
like, like some of that stuff's ubiquitous now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and whatever. It's I understand like if bands have needs, that are filled with some sponsorship, that's, not for me to comment on, but I just find that the logic can be sort of like instrumental logic. You're thinking about not the music first, perhaps in some ways. And if that's the case, then it's kind of like, well, what is it then? Is it sort of partially disingenuous if it's sort of being thought of with commercial interests at the heart of it or something like that, or
Yeah.
um, not to say that everybody has to follow that, or you're a sellout if you don't kind of abide by these rules. We kind of carved our own path, and we just kind of, eventually down the road, like you're faced with all kinds of compromises, and you just try to ride the ones that make sense. And I mean, it's not perfect. There's contradictions involved and at some points down the road, but ultimately, I think we've kind of tried to hold on to the the uh, the spirit of it, and the action of it is maybe not as well as we can, but we try pretty good. And the other side of it is we're not out there playing a whole lot of live stuff to begin with anyways. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, I think we're fortunate enough that we came up through a time where we're able to do what we do because of what we did many, many years ago. And we've been lucky enough that we live in a cheap area of the country. We're not, trying to do this in Toronto or Vancouver or something like,
Yeah.
fairly cheap to get by here in Manitoba.
Mhm.
Um, it's comparatively easier for musicians, I think, to eke out something here than in big cities.
Yeah.
But
But I think, like you said, like sort of the punk rock came from a lot of that, the freaks and geeks and stuff that kind of didn't have their own place and always kind of stood up for or stood up against injustices and stuff like that. So, if you're not speaking up, then it's not to say that you're part of the problem if you don't speak up, but it's kind of like that whole, if you're watching a bully, pick on somebody and you don't say anything, well, are you a part of that problem, right? So,
sure,
yeah, yeah, I get that.
exactly.
And so as of today, the new record comes out tomorrow. Just so if
Yeah.
anyone's wondering when this conversation is taking place. So At Peace comes out tomorrow, which is pretty exciting because the first three songs that have been put out, I've been listening to them on fucking repeat since they each came out. Like,
Oh,
um,
nice. Thanks.
uh, so I haven't heard the rest of the album. I'll be listening to that like first thing tomorrow. You know, what was it like going into recording this album? Because the last couple albums there's been a bit of a gap in between. So from Victory Lap, the whole first administration of Trump happened, the pandemic, everything shut down, came back up. So what was it like going into the process of these songs for this album?
Well, it was kind of like I guess, a weird ringer that we hadn't been through before. Like, we put Victory Lap out, and I guess, did you know, a significant amount of touring for a band like us. And we kind of wrapped that up months before the pandemic started. And my partner and I, we are actually fortunate enough to spend a little bit of time away in Mexico right as the pandemic was starting. So it was kind of like, oh man, like I mean, it was very, very nice to be able to spend time down there and come back sort of as the pandemic's like, okay, now we can't go anywhere. Pretty glad that we got to spend the time we had down there to recharge the batteries, and then all of a sudden it's into pandemic mode. And I welcomed that, for the first year and a half. I kind of like, I was fine with the pause button. I actually, it wasn't terribly difficult for us. It was like a nice bit of a breather at a decent time. And I used that time to really kind of rekindle, just focus listening on music that I meant to listen to for a number of years, but it didn't really have the time. Like sometimes you just get involved with a project and it becomes so all encompassing, especially when you're playing drums and hearing things, and there's so much sound input. My ears fatigue pretty easy. So if we're practicing and playing shows, it's like the idea of going to another show or see somebody else's band after a lengthy rehearsal or something like that. It's just like fucking, I'm out. I can't handle it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, so after kind of going through the ringer of recording, doing those tours, I was ready to just kind of like listen and take a back seat, listening to just walking around Winnipeg with nobody out in the streets listening to music was
Yeah.
kind of like I enjoyed it actually a lot. Um, so we didn't really we kind of like as COVID was going by, we weren't thinking about let's get out on the road and like let's just try to start doing shows because we can. Like we were like, no, we're let's just ride it out until we weren't comfortable about kind of getting out there and potentially just being part of the problem of spreading things around and all that. So we waited till late in the game, and then even that, like we tried to go out a couple times, and it was kind of like a disaster. Somebody gets sick, and we weren't all on the same cycle of getting sick at the same time, so it was like it was a nightmare. And we finished some rebook dates after some cancellations on the West Coast towards the end of 2022 and then finish that basically like, okay, we can't rely on this. We're driving ourselves nuts. Let's basically just, hang up that aspect of the band until we have some material. And yeah, and then the start of 23 was just kind of like it's been a real roller coaster putting this record together. Like as we get older, there's just different things that start falling apart. And just, riding that and like hearing issues, shoulder issues with one of the people in the band and, just different things happening here and there out of nowhere. I had to go into a walking boot for 5 weeks, just as we're kind of getting things going. And it's like, holy shit, okay, another delay. Let's, kind of but we had a few periods of a few months at a time where we really got the ball rolling, and yeah, it's just nice. Like once you're sort of in these adaptive things where your aging bodies and capacities are sort of your you have these new considerations that you need to work into all these other considerations. And yeah, so it's been a kind of I had to go back to the drawing board about like how I'm going to approach playing drums, trying to make things lighter in terms of stick gauge, size of cymbals. I got an old kit out where it's like wood hoops, just everything a little bit kind of like kinder to the body and to the ears, and we kind of went down this path of just kind of stripping everything away, measuring it, bringing it back up so that we're not kind of getting too light where we're sacrificing the aggression that's needed for this kind of genre, and it's been kind of a lot of back to the drawing board mixed with prior experience and then eventually needing that amount, like a little bit of extra time now, given our age to kind of when you get to that sweet spot of playing where it's like, okay, like here's our purpose, here's what we're doing, showing up, this is the material, and you're in sort of a mode of practice where it's kind of happening, that I don't know, like when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I don't really think I'd think about that so much. Like you just go and start playing without warming up or anything, and you do
Yeah.
that long enough,
I was
and
going
then
to
okay.
ask if you have like a
I,
pre-show routine now, like to get ready for a show.
I did for quite a while that involved a lot of like physiotherapy stretches because I developed an elbow problem for a stretch. And then it's one of these things you do the physio exercise and all the stretches like properly, and you sort of forget about the problem. And then you stop doing the physio to take care of the problem. And then you're reminded, oh, yeah, that part of my body hurts again. Better. It's just
Yeah.
kind of chasing at things. But ultimately, when you get back to that that feeling like this is what it feels like to be playing. Well, when I was in my mid 20s, like I still feel like that now, like sweating, everything's going, it's sounding crashing and nice and big and all that. And it's like, yeah, but you're in a 54-year-old body now, and it takes me a couple of weeks to kind of just get to that moment of, but it's more work to kind of get up to that point. But I mean, we're sort of doing that now, and it's fun. Like
Yeah.
I like once I sort of figured out my ear situation and what's safe, and I'm not freaked out about like, oh, am I playing too loud? I'm not comfortable about this. Like once those issues got sorted out, and I have like a hearing protection sort of regimen and everything's in place, and it's like I can't make this worse if I just stick to this plan. And now I'm at that point and I feel like, oh, that's a nice weight to have off because I'm able to have, like, I'm using custom fit in ears with cups over top now.
Mhm.
And I can have the IEMs on such a low setting that it's
Yeah.
just in the back, but it's so crucial to have that. And then I'm not playing with a wedge beside me now either. Just
Yeah.
trying to get used to feet. Well, the tiniest bit of kick in the in ears. I can hardly not even hear it, but just relying more on the feel and like just the organic sound coming up
Yeah.
instead of like, hey, it's not exactly how I want to, like my sensibilities about that stuff, like replicating arena sound around you so that you can feel comfortable in your environment. So
Yeah.
I need to hear absolutely everything going on. Like that's such a, I think like a kind of, it was a waste of a time kind of going down that path. And you risk constantly escalating the stage sound with everybody competing and like,
And then
okay,
you're playing harder and yeah, like I
exactly.
find using in-ears because I haven't up until recently I never used them. And then my side project cover band, their bass player, he's a total like gear nerd. So
Uh-huh.
he's like, here, we're using in-ears for rehearsals and stuff. What a difference that makes, because then I was like, I wasn't attacking the drums as much. I was playing with a bit more technique versus just trying to, you know, beat everything up. So
Right.
that physically I felt a lot better and more relaxed just in the playing, let alone after I was done playing. I didn't need to shove my hands in a bucket of ice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, this technology's definitely helped with that kind of stuff.
I did like over years of using them though, I tended to I would abuse them at times where say you're having a night like you say you're just sort of struggling, with the stage sound and every, a venue, every
Everything's different.
different,
Every
right?
room, yeah.
Everything sounds a little bit different, even with your in-ears on, depending on the room. And for some nights where I don't even know what it would have been, like say it's just like too much reflective, stuff on the walls and it's just bouncing around everywhere and it sounds kind of chaotic and messy. I would lean on turning those things up, like sort of like, okay, this isn't going like A1, and I might need to hear like it's a tool that's right next to me. I could turn it up. And I would tend to do that on nights where it's sort of like, okay, I feel like we're not like as in sync as maybe we could be. And so yeah, I'd always kind of turn them up. And then I realized, okay, no, I'm not doing myself any favors. And those were old, I was kind of using the same flanged sort of in-ear little things. And those things, when you're sweating or open your mouth to say a word or something like that, you're
Pop out.
creating these gaps. So you're
Yep.
hearing a lot of like wah, 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 kind of, loud sounds come in the ear and then they're cut off. And then also when they get super, super sweaty, they started kind of just almost ejecting out of my ears at some point, like
Mhm.
like a little eraser comes flying out of your ear, and then you're just hearing screaming loud out of nowhere. So
Yeah.
anyway, all these things that you gotta, it's so much trial and error, and you make a few mistakes, and it's like, okay, you can get scared off to the point where you're going to hang it up. And I was almost kind of thinking like, holy shit, I fried myself a little too much. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with this, but after a few months of figuring it out and just going to, I went to a couple of audiologists and just came away with a situation that I feel is kind of like under control. I understand it now, but yeah, these things,
Yeah,
geez.
that's something that we don't think a lot of when we're starting out and as we go through this journey, like is the longevity, because you take for granted that you're just always going to be able to do it because you always
Yeah,
did
and
before, right?
and you can't tell a young kid, like thinking to my mom saying, you should turn those headphones down. Well, shit. I'd go out to deliver it'd take me 75 minutes to do that paper route, and I was listening to almost like I'd have those TDK 90s and I'd have one album on side A and a different album on side B. So it'd be like, okay, moving pictures and what else am I going to listen to today? I had I kind of have my Rush cassettes and my other cassettes and couple Maiden albums on one, and I try to get through both. And back then I wanted to hear music like it was at the concert,
Yep.
like I saw Maiden on the Peace of Mind tour, so there I am the day after listening to Peace of Mind, delivering newspapers, pretty much on 9 out of 10. Like
Yep.
that was my comfortable setting, was like letting everybody know what I was listening to when I was walking
Yeah, they could
past.
hear. Yeah.
But yeah, I think I softened up my ears with all that. And then you go from that to playing acoustic drums with no hearing protection for
Yeah.
a number of years.
Yeah.
That's just not right.
No,
So I think what people understand now, like if, younger people getting out there, just make sure that you understand what you're getting into with that kind of stuff and wear earplugs. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
go anywhere without them.
I can't.
Yeah.
If I leave, I go home to get them at this point.
Mhm. Um, so you mentioned your first kit was a Pearl kit. So have you been a
Yeah.
Pearl drums guy? Like, because every time I see you play, you're usually, unless it's like a backline situation, that you're playing Pearl. Like that's kind of your sound.
Yeah,
Are you
I've
pretty specific with all of your gear? Like as far as like, because you mentioned hi-hats or like your cymbals and stuff. Like what's your kind of your gear that you're using?
well, export kit when it was time for us to be like, okay, let's get some decent gear.
Hmm.
I bought a red BLX uh Pearl kit, a sidewalk sale, Mother's Music in 1995.
Nice.
And that's the kit I have here at home. And from that, I'm just thinking mid 90s. I took that on tour for quite a while. And then I think in the early 2000s, around 2004, we knew a local guy who had a backline company who was doing like a sort of like a bulk order of AOT kits. And
Yep.
he knew I was interested in like I kind of was at that point I wanted to I like the idea of having drums that were made here in Canada instead of, sort of being I don't know what the offshore thing was with Pearl at the time, but I kind of thought, yeah, let's do this AOT thing, and we know this guy, and if we get a kit through him, we can maybe get like a little bit of a discount to get a custom kit.
Hmm.
So we had a six-piece AOT kit made, and kind of with a funny feature. Like at that point, it was recommended to us to get a 20-inch kick for it being like more of a studio kit. And I realized it was going to be kind of like a boutique item to a degree, and that we're kind of buying it like with a little bit of a studio consideration, but I also wanted to take it on the road. Well, that kit on the road, like the hardware was so bouncy, and in those early 2000s, mid 2000s, punk shows, people getting on, jumping around, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It was like hitting moving targets. It was not an easy thing to play, and also the hardware and all the little. the little pieces, the screws and all the stuff, if you lost any little bits of that, getting them replaced was almost impossible. And up until this day, it is impossible. Like I know a millwright who actually kind of fashioned a few sort of pieces just functional enough to kind of keep that kind of kit like viable now. But that's the wood hoop kit that I mentioned earlier that we
Mhm.
kind of I went back to. So when I was sort of dealing with those audiologists, that's the kit that we put up at the practice space and that we wrote the last record on and that we recorded the last record on. So that's like the full AOT kit. We took that kit to a couple other recording scenarios, and nobody wanted to use the 20-inch kick. It was like,
No,
are you kidding? You gotta have a 22. And I get like I fully we're practicing now, and I'm kind of like, no, let's do the 22. I think
yeah.
it makes more sense for live, especially.
22
And
is the most versatile size for a kick drum, I think. I mean,
yeah,
I like playing a 24, but for the most part, I like using my 22. Yeah.
24 is too big for me where I like my toms. So I've never even really tried one,
Hmm.
but I do like the 22. But over the years, like since that like touring with that kit with the AOTs, I've come to I just realized I'm so familiar with Pearl stuff and I like the hardware especially is like very dependable. And when you're, showing up somewhere and trying to get over jet lag and set up a kit for the very first time and then go and play on it, it's like I just need something that I feel is like the safest bet. And honestly, I like there's I have a Masters custom series drum kit, this Pearl thing that I found. Actually, Chris found it on Kijiji here. It's just a private sale, and it's like, oh, perfect. Like I don't really want to get new drums at this point. And this kit was virtual, like
Yeah.
very, very close to new. It was sitting in a temperature controlled closet for a number of years unplayed, and the guy used it for kind of a short amount of time. And yeah, anyway, that's the one that we have set up at the practice space now, and I love it. Like I love the tones, and I don't know. I guess I'm used to them to a point where I feel like I can kind of they're just a little more I don't know what the word is. I'm just more comfortable sitting behind them. I feel like I can get sounds out of them a little more consistently, maybe than
Tuning
with
range is there, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So you can go high, you can tune low, yeah, they're
yeah, and they're
Pearl
easy.
make a great product. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and as far as like cymbals go, like have you gone like smaller cymbals over the years? Like,
Oh fuck yeah, yeah,
yeah,
way smaller. I don't know what I was thinking. Like later 90s, early 2000s again. Like I'm getting, sort of like, oh shit, we're gonna do this band. Maybe I should start paying attention to what other people are doing and reading Modern Drummer there for a while. Well, that coupled with
mhm,
some heavy, metal influences, that kind of stuff. I kind of got sucked into this bigger, better, louder, better, everything more full on better and just more athletic kind of playing or contact playing. Anyway, eventually you get up to 19-inch crashes and a 20-inch China and like power rides and all that kind of stuff and 15-inch hi-hats. Like I played for a number of years with two bottoms, actually, two 15 bottoms,
mhm,
just for this low, like less sizzle, just more,
more
I thought,
chunk.
chunky
Yeah.
thrash power, and I loved it. And it's like playing with 2B sticks, Pro Marks, just wailing away on them and playing like you'd have to hit pretty hard with those sticks to get good sounds out of a lot of this heavy cymbals. So it was kind of like you've got to really smash it. And yeah, and then okay, then the elbow problems start, and then fucking hearing's getting degraded, everything else. And here I am, a number of years later, and it's like, okay, I have some 19s in the basement that like right as a last couple of warranties were sort of kind of crapping out. Okay, I got them replaced, and I haven't even fucking touched them. Like they're sitting in these bags. That's from like I don't know how many years ago now, like 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And it's just like I look at them, it's like I know those sound good, but I don't really want to even smash them
Yeah.
anymore.
So you
So
doing
yeah,
like more 17 or 16 to 18 size crashes now?
well, I peeled back all the way to 16s, and I kind of had this, I don't know, like they're definitely quieter, but there's something missing. I couldn't quite find I don't know, ones that were sort of appropriate for certain instances, but I find with the 16s riding on them, it's really hard to get kind
Yeah,
of like groove
that
with
swoosh. I think,
the rebound off them is so flimsy and kind
yeah,
of like weightless or something. It's hard to control.
yeah. For me, what I did is rather than going smaller, I went thinner. So
Okay, yeah.
I'm still doing like this is an 18, which I use on one project just because of like for volume. But for the
Uh-huh.
most part, I'm doing a 19 and a 20, but they're like thinner. And
Mm,
my ride, I was doing a 22 medium, and I just got a 21-inch groove ride, so it's almost like like a crash ride, and I'm using that as my ride now. So I've gone
nice.
down on the ride, but the crashes are still bigger but thinner.
Hmm.
And I find that it maintains. I can still wash on them, um, but I don't feel like I have to get through them as much. So
Yeah,
I'm
that
not.
makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing is going with lighter sticks and actually I'm kind of using 5A Los Cabos now with like maple actually.
Mhm,
It seems like it's like in the way it feels in my hand and with my arms and shoulders, like for like um long practices and that kind of stuff. It just feels like it just feels better at this
mhm.
point. It's,
You find the
what's
maples like, do they feel lighter in your hand? Because I had
a little bit, yeah.
because I usually play hickory,
Hmm.
but I did get a bunch of maple sticks to try. I just went to the factory last 2 weeks ago. Um, and so when I picked up my brick of sticks, I also got a bunch of maple sticks to try, and I haven't played with them yet, but just because it's a softer wood, it I don't know if there's going to be a different feel, even though it's the same size.
Oh, they feel different for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
when I if I pick up a pair of hickory sticks now, it's just like this the same 5Bs. It's like I notice instantly. Or
Hmm.
the intense ones, like those are even harder than
Yeah, they're a little longer.
yeah.
It changes the
Are they
fulcrum
longer too?
completely. The intense ones are long; they're a half inch longer. Yeah.
Are they really?
So
Oh,
so it
okay.
changes where your fulcrum is. So I can't. I used to play those all the time, just where I had everything kind of higher up so for reaching. But now I've got everything lower. So I'm
Yeah.
just using the standard 16-inch length, and the fulcrum is totally different. I find I can play faster. Um,
Huh.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I tend to like shorter drumsticks. I don't like old Vic Firth ones. I remember it's just like, holy shit, I'm just hitting the underside of the tom rim there on the 13 all the time. Like sticks go flying, everything else. But it's funny how you adapt to something like even your grip on a certain gauge of stick. And I felt like I think I played 2B Pro Marks for like the natural ones, especially. I love those. That was I think, geez, probably 20 years.
Wow.
And then most recently, it's just kind of like, oh, I've hit a new favorite. I don't think I'll ever go back to those. This is kind of the new way for me now.
Hmm. Yeah. No, when I switched to Los Cabos, it would have been fuck over 10 years now, and I haven't touched another stick since. Like the mate, like usually the hickory, I've used the red hickories, which they feel dense. Like they feel really like, even though the weight is the same, they just a different feeling in your hand, you know.
Well, when
But
when
the
you said that about like a larger symbol where, a larger weighted symbol where you felt like you'd have to go through it, like to get that sound, I feel like you need a harder stick. You absolutely like maples would just be you'd be
oh,
breaking them all the
gone.
time. Well,
Yeah.
then you need the lighter cymbals. And yeah, I'm kind of I think I'm finding a sweet spot now with some 17s that I'm kind of trying where I feel like it's bridging the gap because we recently broke a 16 that I had for quite a while, and I threw an 18 on just to kind of fill the gap for a while. And even that was just like, holy fuck, it's
Yeah.
where we have everything dialed in at the practice space. It's just like, holy shit, is that ever fucking
Super
great,
loud.
nasty sounding? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny, but you just get things that sort of fall into place. And with the kit, I feel like it's sounding sort of like not really that different than we sounded 20 years ago. Like
Mhm.
I think with the maples, you can kind of lay into the toms a little bit more. Like I don't know. I feel like I'm able to get good tom sounds with the 5A maples. And then
Mhm.
with the lighter cymbals, especially like I've ditched the 15 hi-hat, like the two bottoms. It's just like a normal set of 14s.
Yeah.
I haven't ditched the old ride. It's still the heavy old ride because I
That
so
bell.
many of our stuff, like many songs we've done have been recorded with that ride. And I feel like it's kind of like I liked having that sound consistent, like a on the road and that kind of stuff. But it is pretty thick ride, but it
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah. That kind of leads me into the my crash questions that I do at the end of the conversation. Um, what would be your happy place? Like when you're sitting behind the kit, whether you're playing with the band or if you're just sitting down just to, you know, pass shit on your own. What's your happy place? Are you more of like playing on the hi-hat? Are you doing stuff on the ride or toms or like what's when you're in your zen, like what are you playing on?
I think it changes from here to there, but generally I would say hi-hats. Yeah, just because like I spent a lot of time warming up on the hi-hats, and with the pedal you can kind of,
Yeah.
use that. And there's so many fun things to do in the hi-hats. And that's another thing, like some old albums that I love to death, like some of the hi-hat playing, like guys like Stuart Copeland, you know, Neil Peart and all that kind of stuff. There's so many cool hi-hat instances. I try to think of the ride side, and there's a lot of ride I like too, and I can noodle around on a ride here and there as well. But I
Yeah.
think I have a little more fun with hi-hats, I think.
Hi-hats. Nice.
Yeah.
Um, so I think you kind of alluded to that with your ride. It was what would be your favorite or your oldest piece of gear that you can't live without? And I think you kind of answered that.
Yeah, well, up until we're doing some shows in a couple weeks. Um, I had taken this old Noble and Cooley alloy is Alloy Classic, the snare drum that we'd been sort of playing since our second album. I kept that actually as part of like to keep that kind of consistency. I brought that everywhere for decades actually,
Right.
and I'm not bringing that around anymore. I'm actually taking the AOT wood hoop snare. It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
little bit kind of I can get a good crack out of it without that metal drum. I think I'm done with metal drums completely, actually, to this point. I feel like wood's just warmer and a little bit more forgiving on the joints, and it's not as popping loud.
Mhm.
Do rim shots on that Noble and Cooley. And I think that was the thing that it appealed to me in the first place. Like you know that snare drum, it would cut, like with very little amplification, you could hammer and you'd hear it pretty clearly. And I like the heft of it as well, but I'm really digging this AOT snare drum right now quite a bit. So
What's the depth of it? Is it
uh
an
you
eight
know
inch?
what? Pardon me?
Is it like an 8 inch?
No, no, no,
No.
no. I
Okay.
think it's closer to 5.5. I
Okay.
think. I don't think it's six even. Yeah, 5.5. But with it's like the the rims they stand up a bit
Yeah.
higher too. So it's
They have like the clamp lug. Yeah.
yes, and you have to really that's another thing I realized with these sticks. Like when we took that drum on a few tours years ago, and I was using those 2Bs, like you'd have to switch the snare drum over every once in a while because the wood
You're
hoop would
digging
start
into
getting
it.
these indentations in it. And
Mhm.
then eventually there are indentations all the way around the drum. And then deeper and deeper, eventually it cracks and you got to get a new one. So I haven't had to deal with any of that using these other sticks.
Mhm.
I can play the rims. They're not you don't feel it in your arms as much. And I have the drum centered in a way that I'm not hitting rims on every hit now. So yeah, and also like all these shows, like we're not playing rooms without, they're all amplified and there's all, qualified front of house techs and everything. So, that's what they're there for. If we're all dialed in at a lower volume, then you just amplify that and I think it's gonna sound maybe better than we
Oh
have in
yeah.
the past, to be honest.
Yeah, you find that sweet
Less
spot.
competition.
Mhm. Yeah. You're not
Yeah.
fighting each other for, yeah, for space,
Yeah.
because you guys have a lot going on. And that's another thing with, with your music. There's a lot of intricate parts that if you're all turned way up, it all gets mudded out. Like you don't hear
Oh,
any
no
of it.
kidding. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then those headaches. So yeah, we're sitting, I think, in a pretty good spot. And honestly, getting those in-ears done, I plugged those in after kind of avoiding well, outside of when we got in earnest practicing for the record, I was kind of like practicing with fitted earplugs with speakers built into headphones on top of that. So projecting, but then I have stuff in my ears. And that's kind of how we practiced for the album and how we recorded the album was using that kind of method of hearing protection. And now I think I'm in a better place because I'm back with in-ears, but I got ones that are custom molded to my ear canals and wearing cups over top of that isolates everything else. And I feel like I'm getting just a nice mix and also having the ability like to play along to music without anybody around where I can just kind of have like a very low but comfortable enough volume in my ears, put the cups on over top, and I can play along to stuff. If I was using all that other heavy gear and the heavy sticks, then it's like there you got to crank up the in-ears again.
Yeah.
So I think it's like this is kind of like an exercise of like, what the fuck have we've been thinking for the last 35 years, not
Right.
measuring the sound, the dBs in the
Yeah.
practice space. But there's ways around stuff, and yeah, we put a lot of attention, a lot of time to it. And Chris and Todd have been super patient, over the past couple of years, sort of as we are working through some of these things. But here we are. We're
Yeah.
kind
I
of
think
made it.
uh, I think Bill Stevenson does the same thing with the in-ears and the cups. I think a lot of guys are starting to do that.
Yeah, and consulting with the audiologist, they two different ones that I saw independently both recommended that. And like as opposed to just, putting here like trying to take out 30 dB and then blasting yourself with everything else. It's
Mhm.
I was very hesitant on projecting stuff into my ear canals, but now it seems like it's the way to go with
Yeah.
a very, very controlled and never go past this point sort of ethic to attach to it for sure.
Yeah. All right. So next crash question. So if you could time travel to any event or a live show, where would you go?
Oh man, I think it would be to go back into time to some of those earlier shows that we talked about. Certainly the DOA show, because that was like my kind of moment of being like awakening to a different side of life in this world that I didn't
Mhm.
know about.
Was Chuck drumming for them at that show?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure who it was, but it was just ripping and awesome. Um, And yeah, I think the other one was like we were all pretty big Rush fans growing up in Portage, a bunch of guys on the block that I grew up with and stuff. And years later, I remember being in high school. They came here, performed in Winnipeg in, I think it was 1982 for their Signals tour. And I couldn't go, but it was only 11 or 12 at the time. So wasn't even really on my radar, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I'd see kids at school kind of wandering around with the tour shirts and just thinking, man, I gotta go see that band. That's the band that I want to see. And then they never came to Winnipeg for decades after that. There's this kind of rumor, urban myth that somebody chucked a beer at Geddy Lee as they were leaving stage on the Signals tour, and they were sort of like, "Oh, that's it, Winnipeg's out of the mix," and they bypassed Winnipeg. I don't think that was true, but it was sort of made up as the reason why they didn't play Winnipeg for, I believe it was like well over 20 years. And anyway, we went down to see them in Minneapolis. A few Portage friends of mine got into a car and drove down there. And honestly, I would time travel back to that because
Yeah.
it was a almost kind of this weird validation of this band that we loved top to bottom. And you go down there and go to this arena where it's kind of like, fuck, they're never coming to Winnipeg. They might never come ever again because that guy who threw the beer at Geddy Lee. And we drive down there. It was like sold out Target Center. We're way up in the boonies, so we could see the whole place. And it was remarkable because they played two sets, no opener. It was kind of, they were doing a lot of old classics. They played like By Tor and the Snow Dog, and like it was a
There's some
3 hour
deep cuts. Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a 3 hour show with an intermission. And I swear that entire arena, there wasn't one person that sat down for the whole show. We stood for 3 hours way in the upper decks, and everybody in the upper deck was standing up. I couldn't believe it. It was just like that kind of atmosphere. It blew me away that all those thousands of people were just sort of standing at attention. Like it was just like didn't want to miss a second of it. It was just awesome.
Unreal. And to think of how long it took for them to get into the Hall of Fame. It's just, and like bands like, was it Iron Maiden still aren't in the Hall of Fame? Like it does makes no sense at all. Like
Funny.
those are cornerstone bands that, deserve to be, I mean, I know the whole institutional and blah, 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 whatever, but it's just the idea of, a Hall of Fame that these are people that blood, sweat, tears, decades worth of material that influenced countless of people. Like it's beyond me, you know. Um, so what would be your proudest accomplishment?
Jeez. Oh,
That's an
that's
open-ended general question. It's not specific to music. It's just, what are you the most proud of having done?
huh. I don't know. I don't really know. Proudest? I can't. I don't. That's really tough. I think you know what? I'm just sort of thankful uh to sort of just have the chance to do what we're doing right now. I never expected to be doing this past 40. I always thought that I for some reason I thought people were going to grow up and grow out of heavy music and just kind of that thing was going to have its place in time and then it was going to be gone forever or whatever. I don't even know what I was thinking, but it's interesting how, it just kind of keeps going on and has this kind of staying power. And like I go to see a band like Voivod playing, and it's like I just feel like, man, if they're going and like I was watching them play a number of months ago here in Winnipeg and just had this kind of like that perma grin sort of, the grin stops after the show and your sort of
And
cheeks
so if your
for a
face is
little bit.
sore,
I think I've been smiling ear to ear for the
yeah.
last hour and a half or whatever, but I think those sort of things just kind of put you in a spot where it's just like, geez, like, just to be able to have a chance to jam with those guys and have, our regular kind of band get-togethers and making noise in the practice space is to do that after all these years and all the tweaking that we've had to done and compromises and accommodations and adapting to things. I think that I guess that's kind of an accomplishment to get to this point
Hmm.
and to be, feeling good about it and still being somewhat sane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the whole, being in a band for as long, like the same people, that's an accomplishment as well. Just that, it's like a family, it's like a marriage. Like there's a lot, compromise, a lot of ups and downs. You see each other at your best and your worst, and that's, to me, that's an accomplishment that I'm proud of, still being in the bands that I'm in, just because of that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, so if you got a phone call right after this and it was a band that needed you to sub in for them like in the next 20 minutes, who could you at the drop of a hat play with?
Oh man, Boney M. And I'd love it. I'd
Yeah, yeah,
love that phone call. I'd get on a plane to do that for an hour.
yeah. Oh, it's phenomenal stuff.
There's some stuff about like that dancey kind of stuff that I feel like I don't know, it's fun to fart around with just to kind of I don't know. Like that's what I got a kick out of actually that Legion Army and Navy kind of band back in the early mid 80s that we did. Like there was something about playing where even if it's sort of like half sauced local people at the end of the night, kind of like dancing with you in the last waltz. I always
Yeah,
kind of got a kick out of like people moving to music and you're just sort of there playing a beat. And it's kind of like, wow, this is fun and kind of funny.
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
Oh man,
dance music can be kind of fun too,
the
like
jam bands,
especially
yeah.
yeah, yeah, the good funky stuff. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, yeah. It's funny because like the whole Knights of Columbus Legion stuff, like that's like my dad played in country cover bands, and that was their
Oh,
bread and butter. Like
yeah.
every weekend. It was either one night to Columbus from like a town that's like 30, 40 minutes away or something local. It was just all the time. And my brother played
Some
drums for
weddings
them.
here and there, probably.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And my family's huge, so everybody was getting married. And my brother was drumming for him, so I kind of drum teched for him. Like I would go and set up while he was at work, play a few songs. And this was like when I was like 12, 13 years old, just kind of
Oh,
wetting
yeah.
my
Yeah, that
teeth,
sounds
right?
like a lot of fun for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So what song or drum part do you wish you had recorded?
Oh, oh man. Well, I don't know. I have some drum songs, like especially intros I've always found really interesting, there the song Witch Hunt by Rush. It's kind of like a 7 minute really awesome song. The intro to that has some drum sounds on it that I don't even know what they did to make them, but there's one sound on this one drum that I'm very, very curious what it is. I never really looked into it or tried to figure it out, but yeah, if you ever listen to that song, the intro is so excellent. It's one of those songs that kind of when I hear it in the right environment, it will still raise the hairs, all of the hairs on my back, like
Yeah,
all of them. And there's a lot of them now. Like I can still get that feeling of like that rush of like spine tingling amazingness. It's so mysterious how what makes that happen. So that geez, trying to think. Um I don't know. There's just so many things. There's like one of the things that I started listening to a lot was some Miles Davis stuff over COVID,
mhm.
you know? And I that Bitches Brew album was something that I was listening to quite a bit because there was this project kind of going on about like some people writing a book or about No Means No actually.
Yeah,
And
I saw that book. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I was kind of like I went into a deep dive of No Means No over COVID and got in, like, since they do that Bitches Brew on the One album, that crazy rendition, pretty amazing stuff on that. I listened to a lot of that album, was just kind of wandering around like I mean the same kind of thing. How the hell did they do this? I think there's two drummers on a lot of that, but yeah, Jack DeJohnette was a guy that I never really listened to a whole lot. And it's just like, fuck, man, that is amazing stuff. Um, but just I like those the slow build intro, like the first song on that record is a really fucking awesome one.
Yeah.
And it's just I don't know. That's not really so much in terms of like thinking I wish I would have recorded it, more like how did they record that? I don't get it, but
Yeah.
more in terms of like stuff that we're involved in. I think the thing that I would think about the most would be that Tribal Convictions by Voivod. Like they had that video for that song. So when we were trying to get our like Propagandhi together here, that video was kind of like, you know, it was out there already. And it just seemed like, holy shit, those guys are doing like that's what I want to be doing. And that intro for that song is like I'll never forget. I like the first time hearing it and just thinking, "Holy, this is really kicking my ass." And then seeing the video, and it's like back in those days, video stuff meant like you're almost too big of a band if you have a
Yeah.
video out or something like that.
Back
You know
when
what
like
I mean?
Much Music and MTV and
Yeah,
all that, where you, in rotation, like you had to have some backing or some kind of, you know,
yeah,
plan
yeah.
behind you.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
you're more like, yeah, you're, but that video is just like, oh man, another one of those spine tingling moments. And I hear that, you know, those drums kicking in with the bass kind of like going over the strings and doing the percussive little picking. It's yeah, it's awesome. I love that. So that'd probably be it too.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been over an hour and a half now, so I don't want to eat up your entire evening.
All good.
So, thank you so much for doing this, and I can't wait to hear the album tomorrow. Um, I'm hoping Propaganda gets to make it back to the East Coast at some point.
Oh yeah.
Because
Hopefully we'll know about that fairly soon, actually. We're gonna take a stab. Yeah, should know more hopefully very soon.
okay, don't get my hopes up.
You're near Moncton?
Yes, I'm an hour and a half drive from Moncton. I'm in a
Okay.
smaller community called Miramichi, which was like a bunch of smaller towns that amalgamated into a city.
Okay.
So it's a pretty small spot, but yeah, Moncton would
Sounds
be.
nice.
Moncton has the casino, which is where NoFX played their last club shows in Canada ever.
Oh,
They were
okay.
there with Circle Jerks and Co-Defendants, I think.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
did 2 nights there. Casino's an amazing room. It sounds phenomenal. They have the technology is like they've got like the screens and the state of the art sound system and all that stuff. It's a phenomenal room. I'm actually taking my wife to go see Jan Arden there at the end of the month.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the other? There's like a rock club there. Um, is it the something and Bore, the Tide and
Tide
Bore?
and Bore. We
Yeah.
my band just played there on Friday, last Friday.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's like
Okay.
yeah, it's like a little pub.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that place might be in the mix. I'm not too sure.
yeah, yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man, that I don't know what the capacity is there, but it'll be full.
Okay.
Yeah, Tide and Bore, the Casino New Brunswick, and then the hockey rink is the Avenir Center. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's a great sounding room, the Tide and Bore. If you guys play there, I'm definitely gonna have to find my way there real quick.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully we will be out there at some point this year. Well, it's kind of like a bit of a shifting of scenarios going on with us
Yeah,
right now, but
the
hopefully
planning,
we'll learn us something soon and hopefully we get out there.
a lot of moving parts. Yeah, awesome. Well,
Well, it'd
again,
be nice to meet you if you're out there and we happen to get out there later this fall. That'd be awesome.
yeah, I'll be there.
Cool, man. Well, we'll stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks again, and all the best, and congratulations on the new album.
Thanks, Trey. Thanks for having me and having us.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Take
Bye.
it easy. Have a good night.
Night. All right, that was my conversation with Jord Samoleski from Propagandhi. Thank you again, Jord, for being so generous with your time and being on the podcast. Now, since our chat, the album At Peace has been out for a couple of weeks now, and it's a great album. I absolutely love it. I think Jord's drum parts are always so creative and so innovative. So it's just a treat to listen to new Propagandhi. Every time that they come out with a new album, I always get super pumped. As mentioned at the end of our conversation, Propagandhi did book an Eastern Canadian tour. September 22nd, they'll be in Moncton at the Tide and Boar. I've already secured access to the show, so I'm really looking forward to meeting Jord and the rest of the band come September 22nd. Check out the tour dates, go on their website, go see Propagandhi. They're awesome. Now, since Jord doesn't have social media, I'm going to have the band links in the description. Go check them out on their socials. If there's a show near you, go get a ticket. But also go out and support local live music, the local scene. That's how you build a community. So I'm going to stop. You're probably already gone anyway. That's it for this week's episode. Tune into the next one because I've got another awesome drummer, and it's somebody that I've been following and love his drumming and have for a while. So with that, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cat guy anyways.